In this video, we're going to get started with showing how to decrease the player's life and to the point where we're going to actually keep the save game file as a game over file, so to speak. Like instead of us being able to load it now to save a save file, we won't be able to load it, but we'll still keep it in the config file because we don't actually delete it. And then we're going to set a variable inside of it to let us know that the game was over, so we can then use that file for high scores. To get started, we're going to be inside a function remove player life. We're going to create that, and we're going to create basically what we're going to do is we're going to say if the player lives is greater than 0, so if they had at least 1 life left, then we're going to set pus_save_game.players lives minus equal 1, so we're going to subtract 1 from the player's life, and then we're going to also set the current player lives to what we just actually modified, which is the pus_save_games.players lives left. And then we're going to also save the config. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a check to see, did we actually drop to 0 at that point? Did we go from 1 to 0? And if we did, then at that point the game is over. So what we would do is we would call pus_save_game.saveGameID num is equal to -1, and we'll save the config again, and then we'll open the main menu. Now in this area here would be the best time to maybe throw like a slight timer in, maybe the last 3 seconds or something, and then you pop in your little game over message. But otherwise, like I said, we're not really getting into the glitz and glamour of showing how game over is going to look, so because it's really just flash work. So we're just going to shoot out the console command where we go back to the main menu because the game's over. If for some reason we try to remove a player life and they are already at 0 or worse, lower than 0, we shoot out an error that says player has negative lives left, and we go to open main menu. So we don't save config or anything, we just kind of go back to the main menu. This could only happen if we somehow are able to open a save game where we have negative lives or 0 lives, and that we shouldn't be doing. We should once we hit 0 lives, we shouldn't be able to load it anymore. Without, of course, going around the main menu. I mean, obviously you could find a way to load it going around the main menu, but if you do, it really won't do you much good because nothing will be saved for the most part if you die. Okay, so then inside of pus player controller and state dead, we're going to call on that function remove player life, and then we're going to say if the pus game worldinfo.game current lives is greater than 0, so if they still have lives left, then restart the game. So basically what's going to happen is this is going to run the remove player life area, and if for some reason we don't have enough lives left, this will open the main menu. It won't even probably get to this point. If we do have lives left, it will let us get to this point, and then we will restart the game so we can continue to play the game. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to modify the save game function that we created that creates our save games, the config, let me find it here real quick, our create saved config games function. We're going to modify that because we don't want, like let's say for instance you had 3 saved games, game 1, game 2, and game 3. Game 1 and game 3 you're not playing right now. They still have lives left, everything's going fine. Game 2, however, you want to play that one. So you're playing game 2 and you die and you lose all your lives. At that point what's going to happen is if we don't change this code, when you load up your save game list, when you let's say you close the game and go back in and you're at the main menu and you click load game, you're going to see save game 1 empty save game 2, or save game 1 empty save game 3, or something like that. You're not going to actually see that one game kind of act like it doesn't exist anymore, because the game is going to keep loading it by the array number, and it's going to call from the for loop, and it's going to basically mean that if array 0 isn't playable, we'll just call it empty. If array 1's playable, we'll fill it with save game number 2 or 3 or whatever, and so on and so forth. So it's going to cause an issue where you're going to have empty spots in between your saved games that won't be able to be filled the way you would expect them to be filled. So to fix that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a local pus save game info temp saved info, which is just going to temporarily hold the information for us before we move it into our array. And then we have a local integer c, which is going to be used as an array holder. And when we set c to 0, even though it automatically gets set to 0, we do it anyway just for practice. And then we go down into our for loop, and in there what we're going to do is after the config list section, we're going to set temp saved info equals new none config list I pus save game info class. So we're going to set that info to the new version of this config like we did before for the original array. And that's going to hold it so we can do a check. Then we're going to do say if C is less than max save games, which at this point C is 0 because we only went through the loop once, and temp saved info.saveGameIDNum is greater than or equal to 1. So as long as the IDNum is 1 or higher, then we're going to allow pus save game C to equal temp saved info. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill the array, and then we're going to add, and then after that we're going to add 1 to the array number. So it's kind of like we create our own little mini for loop, sort of, except we're only going to add 1 to the array if a certain situation is met. So this for loop is going to run through the list of in the config, and it's going to find the first or the last 5 created games that don't have an ID num that's lower than 1. And then it's going to set it. And this is what this is going to do then is, for instance, if we had the 1, 2, 3 game situation, it would show game 1 is now save game 1. Game 2 would be empty, but it won't show up as empty. It'll just kind of be not chosen to be added to the array. And then game 3 will be pushed up to show save game 2. So say save game 1, save game 2, and then 3 empty spaces underneath. And that fixes the issue that we would have had otherwise. So at this point now we have a game over ability, because what we do is if the player runs out of lives, we set the ID num to -1. So the next step then would be to find all our -1s and move them into a high scoring list, which we'll get to in the next video.